Well, hello everybody and welcome to Lunch Break Live. Real talk about obesity, food addiction, recovery, and what's really eating you. I am Carrie De La Cruz here on time, but don't tell anybody. The client walked through the door, but I did my darndest to look invisible, at least for now, which is kind of funny because he can see me through my plate glass window, but that's okay. I'll meet with him later. This is all part of being flexible, right? So anyway, I want to welcome you into today's program. I'm so happy you're able to join me today. I'm so thankful that you were flexible enough with your own schedules to be willing to join me on time today. So today's program, called Flexibly Inflexible or Inflexibly Flexible, came from, of course, real world things that are happening in my life. To wit, let's see, Juan, my husband, is scheduled to fly on business today, and he just found out about it last night, and his company set it all up. And so I was going to take him to the airport this morning for his flight, and then I was going to come into work after that, which meant I was going to sleep in a little while. And then we got a call that said, oh, your flight has been canceled, but we have rescheduled it for you for a time that I cannot possibly take him to the airport. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this? And I go through all of these, all of this consternation and all of these machinations, and let's get Uber set up. And of course, Uber does not serve that airport. And what are we going to do? Okay, we'll drop the car off, in the parking structure, and then we'll go pick it up later. And then of course, Hannah doesn't want to help and do that. It's like on and on and on and on. And I'm like, okay. I am feeling incredibly frustrated right now because I'm trying to be flexible here, but there was some schedule that I was expecting to be able to follow. And suddenly none of that is relevant anymore. So all of a sudden, all of this planning, all of these expectations that I had for the day, out the window. And I realized that I'm starting to fall back into this very familiar pattern I have of being inflexible and wanting to control everything. And I was constantly pulling myself back this morning saying, let it go, Carrie. That is not your responsibility. He is quite able to manage for himself. He can work through it. It will work out the way it's going to work out. I couldn't say it was going to be fine because, maybe it's not, but it will work out. This too shall pass. And so I got in my car to head for the office, and boy, traffic was just a nightmare. It was a bear. And on the way here, I started to plug into my job, which not so ironically is the director of production. My job is to make sure that things happen when? On time. And I am constantly pushing people to do what it is that they said they were going to do for me, how they said they'd do it, and for the amount they said it was going to cost me to make it happen. So, am I good at my job because I'm, good at worrying about things, or do I worry, because that's my job to worry? I don't really know, but it's a daily thing, right? So on my way in, because I'm coming in later than usual, I'm beginning to worry about something that I know is supposed to happen this morning. And I plug into this panic of, if I don't get to work by a certain time, they are going to do it without me. And that's going to create a big mess, I've already concluded, because then they're just going to handle it. It wouldn't be the way I was going to handle it. And then they're going to expect me to just pick up the pieces, which I would never have had to pick up if they just wouldn't pick it up, and be on and on and on. Okay. So I just say, let it go. Just let it go. It will be fine. Now, the error I made was, it will be fine when you get there. They will not have done it, which of course was not the case. When I got here, they had done it. And, that plugs into all of these feelings of inadequacy. Don't they think I can do my job? Why are they constantly undermining me? Why won't they just? So there's this messaging that goes along with this inflexibility, and this inflexibility that is born out of the need that goes hog wild crazy and becomes an unhealthy need to control. And out of that comes rigidity. So I thought, wow, what an interesting topic for this show, because if there is one thing that wants to trip up, my recovery, my ability to live a life in serenity, it is that constant battle I have with flexibility and inflexibility. So funny thing is, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And I thought, well, I'll just be radically flexible and just not have anything written down. But then, of course, you know me. I can't entirely do that. I couldn't go scriptless. So I wrote some stuff down. Let's see where we go with it. It might be a short program. And again, I'm coming to you from a place, this is one of my foibles. You know, this is one of my areas of, well, deficiency. It's what they call a character flaw. You know, it's a place that I go. And I know, the good news is now I know it's unhealthy. The good news is I know, time to talk yourself off the ledge, Carrie. Come back in, off the ledge, close the window, back away from the window. Okay. You know, I talk to myself a lot. So let me see what I wrote here and see how this goes. And then you guys see if maybe, you know, it's relevant in your own lives. I have a feeling I'm not the only control freak out there. So by my nature, I am flexible about a lot of things and completely inflexible about others. Aren't most of us? I used to think that my inflexibility was a good thing because it meant I was discerning, demanding, exacting, precise. I paid attention to details and schedules, right? And that was a really, really good thing. And lots of people admired that quality in me and they reinforced it. Their recognition of all of those qualities as being a good thing fed my perfectionism. Oh my gosh, fed it, and it grew and grew and grew, that perfectionism, because it was celebrated. Okay, so it was a win-win as far as I could tell, right? Because it fed that need for perfectionism and control, because everybody was saying, oh yeah, it's a really good thing. You're on top of it. You're on top of it. You're on top of it. All right, but of course, that inflexibility, another word for that might be intolerance, certitude, unyielding desire to make things happen, unrelenting attitude, all of that typically extended to the more high profile areas of my life. In other words, the visible aspects, the things that others would see. I made sure that my attention, my certitude, my obsessive control over things was geared toward or reflected in the areas that other people could see. I wanted to control their focus. I wanted to control where it was that they looked. So if people were going to see it, I was going to apply this unrealistic standard. Okay? Doesn't sound very healthy, does it? Although if the entire world is saying, go you, yay you, you're so good at what you do, you're OCD, yay, okay, then maybe you don't see it for what it is. Interestingly, as inflexible as I was about so many things, I was equally, if not more, flexible about others, especially when I thought no one was watching or would be impacted by it. Now, that flexibility sounded a lot like, oh well, right? Or, oh well, I what can I do? Or I just don't want to. So I'll just be super flexible and I'll just roll over. But here's the thing, being inflexible, and another word for that might be rigid. Do we know any rigid people in our lives, if not ourselves? It's hard. Oh, wait. Yes, no, skipped. I skipped. That's all right, I'm flexible. I can go back, go with it. Walk with me, will you? Let me finish this thought. All right. As inflexible as I was about a lot of things, I was equally, if not more, flexible about others, especially when I thought no one was watching or would be impacted by it, okay? Meaning that I kind of figured, yeah, this is all on me. They're not going to be affected by it. Big deal. I can let that one slide. I can let that one go because that's not going to, affect anyone. This was my clouded thinking. This is how I looked at it. But being inflexible, another word for that, rigid, right, is hard because it doesn't entertain or allow for the possibility of change. Another word for inflexible is controlling. And I am a controller of others. Oh boy. Let me tell you, I always talk about my job. I'm air traffic controller. It's no coincidence that word is in the title. Must control. Where are you going? Where have you been? When are you going to be here? When are you landing? What do you think you're doing? Wow, it's exhausting. All right, let me just tell you how this used to play out in inordinately unhealthy ways. Okay, for example, being a planner, when we would take camping trips with lots of people, I was the one that would decide where we were going to go, and I mean, I would like schedule the time, set up the reservations for everyone, pick the spots, do an Excel spreadsheet for all of the stuff that we had to pack and bring in the motorhome. And then I would make a menu for 2 weeks of everything that we were going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I would make the shopping list from the menu. And I had it in a little 3-ring notebook in the motorhome so that I could follow it and I could know exactly what we were going to do. And then I had a schedule of plans for every single day about what we were going to do on those days and when we were going to do laundry and what. Are you exhausted yet? I was very exhausted, but hey, it's what I did, right? And then inevitably something would happen. We would leave late and then we would be late for check-in. And so someone would take our site. So now these sites that were all supposed to be together, now we're not together anymore. And oh yeah, we're by the trash can and the power pole. Well, I hate that. That's not right. That is not what I planned. I am really upset and bitter. It used to affect the first 2 or 3 days of a trip because I was so upset. I was so unhappy. I was so bitter that things had not gone the way I planned, had not gone the way I wanted them to. And all for what? Because people weren't ready, or someone didn't follow through, or someone didn't do their job. 3 days of that anger and frustration? Really unhealthy, don't you think? Yeah, it ate me up and I fed it. Typically red vines, licorice red vines in the big plastic tub. Yeah, I could eat a whole tub of that, or Oreo double stuffed cookies, or the, what do you call it, honey mustard pretzels. I could do that too, because I was so upset about things not going my way. So that is, yeah, planning, scheduling, and then of course my job, which I show up at every single day, so I plug right on into something that I was quite comfortable doing already. Okay. But then let's talk about my flexibility, my disorganization at home. Don't ask me where the bill, the paid bills or the unpaid bills or the tax information is, or, the paperwork in my office, or, my house used to be far more disorganized than it is now. Thankfully, in recovery, it's more organized, but it's still nowhere near as organized as my office. I can tell you where every single bit of paperwork is in my office. At home, it's a little more questionable, but I have a general idea now. So I am more organized at home than I used to be, but I used to be wildly disorganized. And I decided it was because I had to be so organized during the week that I was entitled to be disorganized, super flexible on my days off. Everyone is entitled to a break from all of that stress, don't you think? And that's how I justified this flexibility and inflexibility in my life. That's how I characterized it. And yet, constantly ate me up. Do you think I liked living in a disorganized home, not being able to find things? I felt like, what is my problem? Why can't I do at home what I do at work? All of this stuff, I used to beat myself up all the time, and I fed it. And here's the thing. In my world, I've always, considered myself to be heavily right-brained and left-brained. The right-brained artistic person is flexible, and the rational, logical person is inflexible. And so these things were constantly coming up against one another. But the common theme really is control. Did I think I could have control and take control and assume control? Or did I not believe I could have it, so I wouldn't try to take it? See, that's kind of deep, but that's the internal struggle, the internal battle that I was constantly waging, losing, and feeding. All right. I don't like the word lenient, for example, right? When you hear flexible, you might think lenient because it feels like I'm giving in or giving up. I don't like the word permanent either because it sounds like there's no room for change and that there's no options. See? And those are extremes though, right? Those aren't necessarily the only ways to define flexibility or inflexibility, leniency or permanency, right? But it's a paradox. And I think all of us experience it in various ways in our lives, in various degrees and capacities and stuff like that. I mean, at least in my case, right? So my flexibility or inflexibility tended to derive from my belief about myself and my capabilities. The less flexible I was, the more capable, controlling I believed I could be. So did you follow that? The less flexible I was, in other words, the more rigid, the more controlling I could be, but I would do it when I felt that I was capable of having that control, exerting that control over others, okay? The less The less flexible I was about things, the more likely others would forgive me for being more flexible in other areas of my life. Now, I got to reread that because the less flexible I was about things, the more likely others would forgive me for being more flexible in other areas of my life. In other words, if you can rely on me and count on me over here to do my job, to stick to the schedule, to be a good planner, to do all these things, the more likely you are to forgive me for these other areas of my life where I'm more flexible, meaning, oh, I don't know, translation, where I'm a failure. Yeah, maybe you'll forgive me and go easy on me in those areas where I'm a failure because I'm such a success over here. That is the messaging that I used to get, you know, self-discipline, organization, diet, exercise. Forgive me for weighing 320 pounds, for being so radically flexible with my food, radically flexible with self-discipline. In other words, having none. So I control others, but not myself. Ooh. Sometimes life requires us to stand up for things. We have to stand firm, like an oak tree. Right? Other times, life requires us to consider things, be willing to bend like a willow tree. All right? How do we know what sort of tree we're supposed to be? I mean, that's kind of the big question. How do we learn to bend without breaking? Right? How do we know when it makes sense to yield, which is not the same thing as stopping or giving up permanently? It's just saying, whoa, let me stop and think about this. Let me reassess. Let me evaluate. Let me maybe come up with an alternative plan. Okay, that's what that looks like, yield. And that's a word that I really didn't know. You know, it was either stop or go. There was no yield. There was certainly no go with the flow. No, go with the flow. Foreign. Might as well have been another language, Chinese or something, because I don't speak Chinese. I speak Spanish, so I couldn't say that. All right. As I live my recovery, I am learning that when I'm standing up for something, and I'm learning when I'm standing up for something and when I'm standing in the way of something. Usually myself, by the way. When I'm being rigid and I'm standing firm for something, now that I'm on to me, I know it. In other words, if I'm crossing my arms and going, no, just forget it. Just, screw it. I'm so done. I'm done. Okay. I know when I'm doing that, when I'm pouting and when I'm being bratty and when I am being unyielding, meaning, okay, take a step back. Let's see what the alternative is. Sometimes I just do it like, okay, I was at Taco Bell last night, driving home late after work, okay, and I got myself a chicken power bowl, and I didn't want the rice on it. And so she says, okay, great, no rice. And I said, yeah, just put beans in its place. And she wanted to charge me 40 cents for extra beans. I'm like, whoa, excuse me? Why do you want to charge me more for something when I'm having you leave something else off that I'm already paying for? Just put this in place of that. Well, anytime, I said, okay, if you're going to charge me for beans, put more lettuce. We have to charge you for that too. Anytime we put extra, I said, it's not extra. It is in place of. Don't you have an in place of button? She's like, no. And I'm at the window now. And I'm like, look, this is ludicrous. I paid for the rice that I don't want, so just put beans on it or don't put anything on it. And she could not make that happen. And I said, fine, give me the rice. Well, that'll teach her, right? Give me the rice. That was me getting in my own way, is all that was, okay? I could have just not had her put extra beans on. I could have taken it up with Taco Bell corporate later and said, really, guys, I'm saving you money and you're charging me more, really? Okay, but I didn't. So I said, fine, give me the rice. I'm sorry, it's too late. They already made it with extra beans, but I'm not charging you. Yes, score. Okay, but not really. But you see, I got in my own way there. That was ridiculous and ludicrous. That was controlling. That was, I will control you, and if you won't roll over, then I'll just give up and say, fine. I didn't want it anyway. So you see, that's very unhealthy behavior, and I did have a good talking to of myself in the car, but I did get my extra beans. Anyway, these are things we learn about ourselves, and they're really unhealthy, and they're things that will eat us up, and we will want to feed them because we don't feel good about ourselves. When we're being pouty and bratty and just saying, you know what, screw you, I'll screw me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and that's kind of where inflexibility rules the day, all right? So I'm learning when I can stand up for something, when that makes sense, or when I'm standing in my own way. I'm learning when I need to say things and when I can leave them unsaid. I said learning. I didn't say I get it right every time. But I am learning that I can leave things unsaid. How do I learn that? By yielding, by waiting a beat and deciding, do I really need to say this right now? I'm learning to explore my unhealthy need for control. I know what that looks like now when that's rearing its ugly head. I'm learning it. And how it manifests itself. Inflexibility versus flexibility. You see, they're like black and white. Where's the middle? Is there middle between inflexibility and like uber flexibility where you just like jello, you just roll over and you're spineless? Yeah, of course. Flexibility doesn't imply no ability or that you're not going to do anything. It implies that you're going to consider your options. You're going to consider alternatives. I think you're going to be open to. Willing to consider. And I think those are really, really good things to consider. Let's see. Do I need to insert myself here or not? That's a big one. Let it go, Carrie. Juan can surely figure out his way from the hotel, from the airport to the hotel. Yeah, he's a big boy now. He can figure that out. Leave it alone, Carrie. Leave it alone, right? But I have to tell myself not to be controlling. There's a difference. I know part of being able to let go of that controlling thing is realizing that that doesn't mean I'm not needed. It doesn't mean I'm not important if I don't insert myself, because that's demanding. That's demanding to be needed, and that's not a very, very healthy thing. If he needs help, he can ask me. If he doesn't need help, he doesn't have to ask me. If he needs help and doesn't ask me, oh well, it doesn't make me less. But it would be nice if he asked me, don't you think? All right. Must I declare an opinion or not? You don't have to always have an opinion about absolutely everything. You really don't. Or if you do have an opinion, you don't have to share it with everybody. And I know that's really foreign to all of you on Facebook and Twitter, where everyone has to share an opinion about everything. But let's just say you don't always have to. I promise. Is not controlling something eating me up? That's really, really the big question. And when I leave that question unanswered, I overfeed it. Okay. In the past, that's what used to happen. It would eat me up. Not controlling something would eat me up and I would overfeed it. Now I'm on to it. You see, I'm going, this is a need to control. No need to feed that. Okay. Let's see what time it is. Okay. We're getting closing in here on my no notes show about flexibility and inflexibility. I'll be flexible. Maybe I could skip ahead. I know that my desire to control is a protective measure for my need to be valued. I can say that because it's true. It may not be true for you, but this is what I've concluded about myself. My desire to control is a protective measure for my need to be valued. If I control things, then other people will have confidence in me and I will be valued. That's my math. Okay, that's my value math. It's what I always believed. And that is why I always needed to control more and more and more and more, because I felt less and less and less valued, see? I felt less valuable when I didn't control something, so I figured if I controlled more, I'd feel more valuable. But that value can't come from outside. It has to come from within. I didn't realize that then. I was looking to others to feed that need instead of feeding it myself. When I felt less and less, when I felt less valuable about not being able to control things, guess what I did? I ate more. And I fed my food addiction, and it ran away with me, and then I would try desperately to control other people. So that's how that manifests itself. What are some healthy things that you could be inflexible about? Like certainly in my life, I am inflexible, which is unyielding. I am rigid about my food abstinence list. That's it. Not an option. There's no gray area on my list. If it's on the list, it's on the list. No gray areas there. Not open to consideration. So eating something on that list, not going to happen. I am wildly inflexible about that, period. There is no discussion or consideration, end of conversation. That is my healthy version of inflexibility. Healthy thing I'm flexible about, I'm learning to be flexible about not trying to control everyone. Letting things happen, learning, hey, you know what, is this really my responsibility to get involved here? Like when we go to Mexico, schedules, not really strong suit down there. Very, very mañana, very much, oh, well, we'll do it tomorrow if we don't have time today. And I'm like, but I want to do it today and we had time. And if you had just planned, okay, Carrie, let it go, let it go. This is not your rodeo. This is not your circus. These aren't your 3 rings that you're trying to manage or anything else. Let it go. Let it go. It's someone else's show. Let it go, Carrie. I'm not less of a person because I didn't do the thing today that I'm pretty sure that if I'd scheduled it, we would have had time to do. But because someone else didn't schedule it, we didn't do it. But I'm not less of a person, and I'm learning to talk myself off the ledge and let it go and say, you know what? Sometimes things just aren't going to happen, and I'm not going to die over that. I remind myself when things are my business and when they aren't. I talk myself through the disappointments. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get through that long conversation with myself, and my frustrations, like this morning. In other words, I know that just because I stand up for something doesn't mean anything will change. And not standing up for everything doesn't mean it won't change. So that's my talk about flexible inflexibility and inflexible flexibility. And that is a very vital component, I believe, in recovery life, because the need to control something, the rigidity, the inflexibility, the unwillingness to consider things, that paves the road for a life that is anything but serene. And likewise, being too lenient, I guess you could say, which is to say just rolling over, not standing up for anything, not sticking to anything, not believing enough in myself to hold myself, accountable and stuff like that. That also paves the way to a life that is anything but serene because it's disorganized. And so one of the ways that I have been learning, and this is like maybe a good tool for you, is, and I've talked about it on other shows, is reclaiming your life. Find ways to reclaim your life and reclaim your peace. And that is a way that you can exert a healthy inflexibility that says, I will not tolerate this flexibility, this level of leniency in my life anymore. Maybe I will go through that drawer, in the dresser. Maybe I will go through my jewelry and weed it out and reclaim that space, reclaim that organization so that I don't have to feel so frantic and panicked when I can't find things, okay? So you're looking for balance here, a balanced, I think flexibility, doesn't have to, like I said, doesn't have to mean spineless, okay? It just means you're open to consideration, and that's my wish for you guys today. So I'm going to sign off and leave you with that. I'll be eager to hear what you have to say. I'm going to read through your notes offline. Thank you again for being here, and I do encourage you guys to share this with others. Share this with your support group or your friends, and just let other people know what I'm talking about if this resonates with you, or if you think someone else could benefit and find the freedom of recovery from the things I'm talking about. So that's it, guys. I want you all to be well. Have courage. Seek peace, embrace joy, and above all, flexibly live your recovery. Remember, you can't stop feeding what's eating you if you don't know what's eating you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.